In 1951, a teenage prince stood beside his grandfather inside a mosque in Jerusalem. Moments later, gunfire shattered the air. The assassin's bullets killed the King of Jordan, but the boy beside him survived by sheer chance. That boy would soon become King Hussein. He was only 16 when he inherited one of the most fragile thrones in the world. His country was small, poor, and surrounded by powerful enemies. Many observers believed the young monarch would be swept away by the violent political storms already shaking the Middle East. During the 1950s and 1960s, kings were falling across the region. Military coups toppled governments, revolutions erupted in Arab capitals, and fiery leaders like Gamal Abdel Nasser called for the end of monarchies. Across the border, the young state of Israel was locked in bitter conflict with its neighbors. Inside Jordan, tensions were just as dangerous. Palestinian guerrilla fighters would eventually challenge the authority of the king himself, turning parts of his own country into a battlefield. At one point, armed factions controlled the streets of Amman, while the government struggled to maintain order. Assassination plots followed Hussein throughout his life. Some came from radical nationalists, others from militants who believed he had betrayed the Arab cause. Each crisis forced the king to choose between confrontation, compromise, or survival. Yet, against all expectations, Hussein did not fall. For nearly half a century, he ruled Jordan through wars, revolutions, and regional chaos. His decisions would shape the politics of the Middle East and influence the fragile balance between war and peace. The remarkable question is not how King Hussein ruled, but how he managed to survive at all. To understand King Hussein's story, we must begin in the turbulent years after the Second World War. The Middle East was undergoing a profound transformation as old empires collapsed and new nations struggled to define themselves. Borders drawn only decades earlier were fragile, and political movements across the region were beginning to challenge traditional rulers. At the center of this transformation stood the young Kingdom of Jordan. Officially known as the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, the state had been created in the aftermath of the First World War, when the defeated Ottoman Empire lost control of its Arab territories. The land east of the Jordan River had originally been administered by the British Empire as the Emirate of Transjordan. The ruling family of Jordan belonged to the Hashemites, a dynasty with deep historical roots in the Islamic world. The family claimed direct descent from the Prophet Muhammad and had long served as guardians of the holy cities in the Arabian Peninsula. After the First World War, the British supported the Hashemites as regional allies, helping establish monarchies in Iraq and Transjordan. Jordan's founding ruler was Abdallah I of Jordan, Hussein's grandfather. Abdallah had spent decades navigating complex regional politics while attempting to maintain stability in a young and vulnerable state. His kingdom faced constant pressure from competing Arab movements and the growing conflict surrounding the creation of Israel. In 1948, tensions in the region exploded into war. The declaration of the State of Israel triggered a major conflict between the new country and several Arab states. Jordan's Arab Legion, one of the best-trained forces in the region, played a central role in the fighting. During that war, Jordan captured and later annexed the territory known as the West Bank, including the historic city of Jerusalem and its eastern districts. This dramatically increased Jordan's population, as hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Arabs suddenly became citizens of the kingdom. While this expansion strengthened Jordan territorially, it also created deep political tensions that would shape the country for decades. King Hussein's rule ended suddenly in 1951 when he was assassinated while visiting Jerusalem. Standing beside him that day was his teenage grandson, Hussein. According to historical accounts, a medal on the young prince's uniform deflected a bullet that might otherwise have killed him. The assassination shocked the entire region and plunged Jordan into uncertainty. Abdallah's son, Talal of Jordan, briefly became king, but his reign was short. Due to serious health issues, Talal was declared unfit to rule after just 1 year on the throne. This left the Hashemite kingdom in a precarious situation. In 1952, the Jordanian parliament proclaimed the 16-year-old Prince Hussein as the new king. Because he was still a minor, a regency council governed temporarily until he officially assumed power in 1953. Few leaders in the modern Middle East had ever begun their reign under such fragile conditions. Jordan had limited natural resources, depended heavily on foreign aid, and was surrounded by far larger and more powerful states. Inside the country, the population was divided between East Bank Jordanians and a large Palestinian community whose political aspirations were often very different. Meanwhile, a powerful wave of Arab nationalism was sweeping across the region. Leaders such as Gamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt promoted the idea that Arab unity should replace old monarchies and colonial-era governments. Nasser's speeches reached millions through radio broadcasts and inspired movements that challenged traditional rulers throughout the Middle East. Revolutions soon followed this rising tide of nationalism. Monarchies in neighboring countries began to collapse, often through violent military coups. The Hashemite monarchy in Iraq, ruled by Hussein's relatives, would eventually be overthrown in 1958 in a brutal uprising. For the young King Hussein, these developments were deeply alarming. They suggested that monarchies like his might not survive the new political climate sweeping the Arab world. Jordan's own military and political elite contained factions sympathetic to revolutionary ideas, raising the constant possibility of internal unrest. At the same time, the unresolved conflict with Israel continued to dominate regional politics. Border clashes, refugee crises, and diplomatic tensions kept the region in a state of near-permanent instability. Any miscalculation could easily draw Jordan into another devastating war. Despite these dangers, Hussein entered his reign determined to preserve the independence of his country. Those who observed him during these early years described a young monarch who was both cautious and pragmatic. He understood that survival would depend not only on military strength, but also on careful diplomacy and the ability to navigate between powerful rivals. The challenges facing Jordan were immense, but they also forced Hussein to develop political instincts far earlier than most rulers. Every decision carried consequences that could affect the future of his kingdom. As events unfolded across the Middle East, the young king would soon face crises that tested both his authority and the survival of his state. When King Hussein formally assumed full authority in 1953, he was barely 18 years old. Many regional leaders and foreign observers doubted that such a young monarch could maintain control over a country facing so many internal and external pressures. Yet Hussein quickly realized that survival would require constant balance between competing forces both inside Jordan and across the Middle East. One of the first major challenges came from the growing influence of Arab nationalism. Across the Arab world, the charismatic Egyptian president Gamal Abdel Nasser was becoming the dominant political voice of the region. Through speeches broadcast across the Middle East, Nasser called for Arab unity, independence from Western influence, and the overthrow of monarchies he viewed as relics of colonial control. These ideas resonated with many young officers and political activists in Jordan. Some members of the Jordanian military began to sympathize openly with Nasser's vision, raising fears that Jordan might experience the same kind of military coup that had already transformed politics in other Arab states. Hussein understood that maintaining loyalty within the armed forces would be essential to his survival. At that time, Jordan's most powerful military force was the Arab Legion, a highly disciplined army originally organized with British assistance. Its commander was the experienced British officer John Bagot Glubb, widely known as Glubb Pasha. While Glubb had played a key role in building the Arab Legion into a respected force, many Jordanians viewed the continued presence of a British commander as a symbol of foreign influence. By the mid-1950s, pressure was growing for Hussein to assert greater national independence. In 1956, the young king made a bold and unexpected decision. He dismissed Glubb Pasha and removed British officers from command positions in the Jordanian army, a move later known as the Arabization of the military command. The decision shocked many foreign governments, including the United Kingdom, which had long supported Jordan financially and militarily. Yet inside Jordan and across much of the Arab world, the move greatly increased Hussein's popularity. It demonstrated that the young monarch was willing to act independently rather than simply follow Western influence. However, the political environment of the region remained volatile. In 1958, a dramatic event shook the entire Middle East when a violent military coup overthrew the Hashemite monarchy in Iraq. The Iraqi royal family, closely related to Hussein's own dynasty, was killed during the uprising. For Hussein, the message was unmistakable. If revolution could destroy a powerful monarchy in Baghdad, it could easily threaten the throne in Amman. The Iraqi revolution intensified fears that Jordan might be the next target of radical movements. That same year, tensions inside Jordan reached dangerous levels. Political factions sympathetic to Nasser gained influence, and rumors circulated about possible coups within the military. In response, Hussein moved quickly to secure his government. With support from loyal military units and assistance from Western allies, he managed to stabilize the situation and prevent a collapse of the monarchy. Even as Hussein dealt with internal pressures, the regional conflict with Israel continued to shape Jordan's strategic choices. The border between Jordan and Israel remained tense, with periodic clashes and growing frustration among Palestinian refugees living within Jordanian territory. In the 1960s, Palestinian nationalism began to organize more formally through groups such as the Palestine Liberation Organization, often known as the PLO. Many Palestinians hoped these organizations would eventually liberate territories lost in earlier wars with Israel. However, their growing military presence inside Jordan created a complicated situation for Hussein. The most dramatic regional crisis of the decade came in 1967. Rising tensions between Israel and several Arab states escalated into what became known as the Six-Day War. In June of that year, Israel launched preemptive strikes against neighboring countries, including Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. Despite initial hesitation, Jordan joined the conflict after receiving reports that Arab forces were advancing successfully. In reality, Israel's military quickly gained the advantage. Within 6 days, Israeli forces captured vast territories, including the West Bank, which Jordan had controlled since 1948. The loss of the West Bank was a devastating blow to the kingdom. Not only did the kingdom lose a large portion of its territory, but it also absorbed another massive wave of Palestinian refugees. The defeat fundamentally reshaped the political landscape inside the country. In the years that followed, Palestinian guerrilla groups expanded their activities inside Jordanian territory.
Many operated independently of the government, launching attacks across the border into Israel while maintaining armed bases inside Jordan. Over time, these groups began to behave increasingly like a parallel authority. By the late 1960s, tensions between the Jordanian government and Palestinian armed organizations reached a breaking point. Armed fighters established checkpoints, carried weapons openly in major cities, and sometimes clashed with Jordanian security forces. The situation raised a dangerous question: who truly controlled the country? This tension exploded in 1970 during a period known as Black September. After a series of escalating confrontations, the Jordanian army moved to reassert control over areas dominated by Palestinian guerrilla groups. Intense fighting erupted in several cities, including parts of Amman. The conflict was brutal and politically risky. Many Arab governments criticized Hussein for confronting Palestinian organizations, while others quietly supported his attempt to restore state authority. The fighting lasted for months before the Jordanian army ultimately forced most of the guerrilla forces out of the country. Although Hussein succeeded in preserving his rule, the crisis revealed just how fragile Jordan's stability could be. The king had faced internal rebellion, regional war, and revolutionary pressure, all within the first 2 decades of his reign. Yet the most difficult decisions of his leadership were still ahead.
By the early 1970s, King Hussein had survived threats that could have destroyed many governments. He had faced revolutionary pressure, regional wars, and a violent internal conflict during Black September. Yet survival did not bring peace, because the central conflict shaping the Middle East still remained unresolved. After the fighting in Jordan ended, the country slowly stabilized. The armed presence of the Palestinian Liberation Organization was largely removed from Jordanian territory, and the monarchy regained full control of the state. But the political consequences of the crisis were profound, and the region remained deeply divided. Throughout the 1970s, Hussein faced a delicate challenge. Jordan still contained a large Palestinian population, many of whom had arrived as refugees after the Arab-Israeli wars. The king understood that any long-term stability would require balancing the interests of Jordanians, Palestinians, and the wider Arab world. Meanwhile, tensions with Israel continued to shape every strategic calculation. The borders remained sensitive, and the unresolved status of the West Bank created constant political pressure. For Hussein, the territory represented both a historical responsibility and a dangerous source of instability. In 1973, another major conflict erupted in the region. Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel during what became known as the Yom Kippur War. Many Arab states joined the confrontation, hoping to regain territory lost in the 1967 war. Jordan's position was complicated. He chose a cautious path, sending a limited Jordanian force to assist Syrian troops while avoiding full-scale involvement. His decision reflected a broader strategy that had begun to emerge in his leadership. Jordan would support Arab causes, but it would avoid actions that could lead to national disaster. Over time, Hussein began to recognize a difficult reality. Military confrontation had repeatedly failed to resolve the conflict with Israel. Each war had produced new losses, new refugees, and deeper divisions across the region. In the late 1980s, Hussein made another historic decision that reshaped Jordan's role in the conflict. In 1988, he formally severed Jordan's administrative ties to the West Bank, acknowledging that the territory's political future should be determined by the Palestinians themselves. This step cleared the way for the Palestinian Liberation Organization to pursue international negotiations as the representative of the Palestinian people. For Jordan,
It also marked the end of a long and complicated chapter in which the kingdom had governed millions of Palestinians beyond the Jordan River. But Hussein's most dramatic move was still to come. In the early 1990s, global politics were shifting rapidly. The Cold War was ending, regional alliances were changing, and new diplomatic opportunities began to appear across the Middle East. In 1994, after years of quiet negotiations, Hussein signed a historic peace agreement with Israel. The treaty was concluded with Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and formally ended the state of war that had existed between the two countries for nearly half a century. The signing of the treaty transformed Jordan's position internationally. It secured recognized borders, opened the door to economic cooperation, and strengthened Jordan's relationship with the United States and other Western governments. Yet the decision was not universally popular in the Arab world. Some critics viewed the treaty as a controversial step that weakened collective Arab pressure on Israel. Others saw it as a pragmatic effort to secure Jordan's future after decades of conflict. For Hussein, the moment carried enormous historical weight. After surviving wars, revolutions, and assassination attempts, he had chosen diplomacy over confrontation. The young king, who had once struggled simply to keep his throne, was now reshaping the strategic landscape of the Middle East. But the final chapter of his life would reveal another side of his legacy, one that extended beyond politics and diplomacy.
The peace treaty of 1994 marked one of the defining achievements of King Hussein of Jordan's long reign. After decades of conflict, the agreement normalized relations between Jordan and Israel and established internationally recognized borders between the two countries. It also opened the door to cooperation in water sharing, trade, and security. For Hussein, however, the treaty was not only about diplomacy. It reflected a broader philosophy that had shaped his leadership for decades. Having witnessed repeated wars across the region, he increasingly believed that stability and negotiation offered a better path for Jordan's survival. Throughout the 1990s, Hussein remained deeply involved in regional diplomacy. He often acted as a mediator between Arab leaders, Western governments, and Israeli officials, using his personal relationships to encourage dialogue during periods of tension. His ability to maintain trust with very different political actors became one of his most distinctive strengths as a leader. At home, Jordan continued to face significant economic and political pressures. The country lacked major natural resources, and its population had grown rapidly due to waves of refugees from neighboring conflicts. Despite these challenges, the monarchy maintained relative stability in a region that was often marked by upheaval. Hussein's personal popularity among many Jordanians played a crucial role in that stability. He traveled widely throughout the country, meeting citizens directly, and maintaining an image of accessibility that was unusual for a monarch. For many people, he symbolized continuity during decades of regional uncertainty. In the late 1990s, however, the king's health began to decline. After a long battle with cancer, he spent extended periods receiving treatment abroad. Despite his illness, he remained actively involved in state affairs and continued to guide the country through delicate political moments. In early 1999, recognizing that his health was failing, Hussein made a final decision about the future of the monarchy. He named his eldest son, Abdallah II of Jordan, as his successor. The move ensured a smooth transition and preserved stability within the royal family and the state. On February 7, 1999, King Hussein died after ruling Jordan for nearly 47 years. His death marked the end of one of the longest reigns in modern Middle Eastern history. Leaders from across the world attended his funeral, reflecting the wide network of relationships he had built over decades of diplomacy.
Hussein left behind a country that had survived wars, revolutions, and regional crises. Jordan remained a relatively stable state in a turbulent region, a testament to the cautious and pragmatic approach that had defined his rule. His legacy was not built on conquest or expansion, but on endurance, negotiation, and the careful management of difficult realities.
The life of King Hussein of Jordan reveals how leadership can shape the fate of a nation surrounded by uncertainty. He inherited the throne as a teenager after the assassination of his grandfather, ruling a country that many believed could not survive the storms of Middle Eastern politics. Yet for nearly half a century, he navigated wars, revolutions, coups, and internal conflict while keeping Jordan intact. His reign was defined by difficult choices. At times he fought wars, as in the devastating conflict of 1967, and at other moments he chose negotiation, most clearly in the peace treaty signed with Israel in 1994. Each decision carried risks, both for his personal survival and for the stability of his country. Hussein understood something many leaders struggled to accept. Geography and politics had placed Jordan in the middle of one of the most complicated regions on Earth. His strategy was not to dominate that environment, but to adapt to it, balancing alliances while avoiding catastrophes that could destroy the kingdom. By the time of his death in 1999, Jordan remained one of the most stable states in the region. That stability did not come from wealth or military power, but careful leadership, diplomacy, and the ability to survive crisis after crisis. Looking back, the story of King Hussein raises an important question. Was his greatest achievement the peace he helped build, or simply the survival of his country during one of the most turbulent periods in modern Middle Eastern history? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy deep, carefully researched historical documentaries like this, consider liking the video and subscribing for more stories from the past that continue to shape our world today.